Before I moved to Bangalore in 2011, I'll admit I carried a lot of stereotypes about South Indians. That they were overly religious, mostly vegetarian, conservative, quiet, maybe even boring. I thought of the South as this distant corner of India, God fearing people, temple towns, and classical dance. But once I got here, that image broke. Over the years, as I made friends in Bangalore, traveled to Chennai, Hyderabad, some of the hill stations here, and across Kerala, I began to see how little I really knew. The people I met were sharp, grounded, curious, and anything but boring. Some were deeply spiritual, others fiercely rational, some rooted in tradition, while others were radically progressive. But alongside this beauty, I started noticing something else. A quiet resentment, a sense of being misunderstood. That everything from language to culture to power in this country tends to center around the North and leaves the South either stereotyped, sidelined, or ignored. This video isn't about taking sides or about who's better. It's about understanding why South India so often feels left out and whether that feeling comes from something real. We'll talk about language, cultural dominance, media narratives, and the tension no one really names, but one that most of us have felt. This isn't a debate, it's a conversation, one that has long been overdue. We love to call India diverse. 22 official languages, a few hundred dialects, every religion under the sun, from the snow-capped Himalayas to the backwaters of Kerala. We've got it all. But here's the truth we don't say out loud. Most Indians don't experience that India. We experience our own corner of it, through our language, our food, our festivals, and the news we watch at 9 p.m. Think about it. Is that really diversity or just fragmentation? And nowhere is this divide sharper than between the North and the South. Outsiders might think India is one big seamless culture, but anyone who's lived here knows. The differences between the Gangetic Plains and the Dravidian South run deep. Historically, linguistically, politically, and even emotionally. The thing is, this isn't about open hostility. It's more subtle than that. It's in the assumptions North Indians often make about South Indians, the outdated stereotypes, and the casual cultural blind spots. These aren't loud arguments, they're quiet misunderstandings. They show up in our cinema, in how we vote, in what's shown on national TV. Not as violence, but as erasure. And that, over time, builds into something deeper, a disconnect most people feel but rarely ever name. For many South Indians, language isn't just how they speak, it's who they are. Tamil, for instance, isn't just a language, it's a civilizational thread that stretches back over 2,000 years. Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, each one has its own literary tradition, its own poetry, its own identity. So when someone says these languages should make space for Hindi, it's not a harmless suggestion. It feels like cultural erasure. And yet, many North Indians grow up believing, without ever questioning it, that Hindi is India's national language. It isn't. India has no national language. Hindi and English are official, but that's paperwork, not consensus. This isn't just theory. In Tamil Nadu, resistance to Hindi isn't new. It goes back nearly a century. The anti-Hindi agitations of the 1930s through the 60s weren't led by extremists. They were driven by students, poets, teachers, and politicians, all fighting against what they saw as cultural domination from the North. And that fear hasn't disappeared. Today, it shows up in smaller ways. Job listings that say Hindi speaking only, customer service lines that default to Hindi, apps that load in Hindi first, even when you're in Bangalore or Kochi. It's not about being anti-Hindi. Most South Indians speak 3 or 4 languages, and a lot of times, Hindi is one of them. The issue is who decides which language gets to define India? And more importantly, who gets left out when that decision is made? To many North Indians, South India still exists as a postcard. Banana leaves, temple gopurams, Bharatnatyam dancers, filter coffee. It's a pretty image, but also a shallow one. That kind of romantic reduction misses everything else that's happening here. Where's the spotlight on Kerala's radical land reforms and healthcare model? Or Tamil Nadu's powerful Dravidian rationalist movements that reshaped politics? What about the IT revolution that turned Hyderabad and Bangalore into global tech hubs? Or the fierce beauty of Kannada Navodaya literature and the political sharpness of Malayalam cinema? These stories rarely make it to the national stage. In North Indian pop culture, South Indians have usually always been only comic relief. Exaggerated accents, over-the-top body language, the funny character with coconut oil in their hair. Bollywood doesn't just underrepresent South India, it caricatures it. And when a North Indian shows up in a South Indian film, it's different. They might still be the outsider, but they're not always the joke. That says something about how each region sees the other. One simplifies or caricatures, the other more often excludes. And in that difference, you can see who's held the pen, who's written the narrative of what Indian culture is supposed to look like. When someone in Tamil Nadu hears Indian food and sees only butter naan and paneer, or watches Republic Day tableau where North Indian icons dominate year after year, it doesn't feel like inclusion, it feels like neglect. What we need to understand is that South India isn't exotic, it's just underrepresented and tired of being painted in someone else's colors. Beneath all the stereotypes and cultural misunderstandings lies something deeper: power. India's power, political, administrative, and symbolic, has always lived in the north. Delhi isn't just the capital, it's where the rules are written, the budgets decided, the stories framed. And from the south, that view often feels one-sided. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, these states consistently top charts in literacy, healthcare, and per capita income. They contribute more to India's tax pool than they get back. And yet, when it comes to national policy, they often feel like background noise. During the 15th Finance Commission, Southern leaders raised a troubling point. States that managed to control population growth are now being punished for it. How? By receiving less funding than states with higher population but weaker metrics. In other words, doing well makes you pay more but receive less. But this isn't just about money, it's about visibility. When national leaders visit the South and speak only in Hindi, when parliamentary debates sideline Southern concerns, when news anchors treat the South like a remote province rather than a co-equal partner, a psychological divide begins to take root. For many in the South, Delhi doesn't feel like a capital. It feels like a distant authority. And for many in the North, the South feels like a distant cousin. Talented, even admirable, but still somehow peripheral. Important, yes, but never central. And over time, that sense of distance becomes more than just geography. It becomes emotional, political, cultural, and much harder to bridge. This isn't just about culture or politics. It's about the quiet emotion that builds when one side feels overlooked and the other unwelcome. Resentment. In southern cities, there's often a perception, not always spoken, but deeply felt, that North Indians arrive with a kind of cultural entitlement. They expect services in Hindi, they mock the food, they laugh at local languages, and they're often surprised, even confused, when they realize that English, not Hindi, is the common language here. Among South Indians, phrases like Northies are loud, they don't adjust, they think they're superior, float about in WhatsApp groups, housing societies, and behind the scenes office conversations. There's a growing feeling that many North Indians come south for the jobs, for the weather, for the infrastructure, but leave their curiosity at the airport gate. Meanwhile, North Indians who move south often say the opposite, that they're met with cold stares in markets when they speak Hindi, that they're told to learn the local language even if they're only here for 6 months, that South Indians feel distant, more analytical than approachable, or even too regional to be truly national, as if asserting one's own identity is somehow anti-Indian. These stories don't always play out in headlines, but they shape who gets hired, who gets invited, who marries whom. Resentment doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just simmers, quietly, silently, in the feeling of not being seen, not being understood, and not being included. India is still under construction, not just in roads or bridges, but in identity as well. We're not a nation bound by sameness. We are a country that survives and thrives by holding contradictions. But unity doesn't mean we all think alike. Real unity is built on mutual respect, on genuine curiosity about the other, on equity. And for that to happen, North Indians need to confront something uncomfortable. That the cultural default they grew up with is just that, a default, and not the national norm. Just as Punjab, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh are steeped in history, so are Karnataka and Kerala. Their stories are not side notes, they are chapters in the Indian book, and with no smaller font. At the same time, South Indians must also resist the pull of defensive regionalism and linguistic and cultural superiority. This conversation isn't about who's more Indian. It's about finally acknowledging that India is not a monochrome canvas. The distance between Delhi and Bangalore may not need a passport, but it demands the same empathy and effort that we'd give people from a foreign land. India is not one river, it's a delta. Dozens of tributaries, languages, memories, worldviews, flowing alongside, not against. And unless we learn to speak across those channels, not just in language, but also in listening, we'll keep living in the same house, but we'll never sit at the same table. If you found this video meaningful, please hit like and share it with someone who might relate. Also, let us know in the comments if you would like to understand the north side of the story as well. And until we meet next, stay curious, stay unaligned.